Okay, students, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to try and explain the two types of factoring we've seen so far. Both of these are called trinomials because they have three terms, and there's basically two different categories we've seen so far. The first one is if you have something just with an x squared, nothing in front. We'd say it has no coefficient, or it has a coefficient of 1, technically. So x squared plus, let's make something up here, x squared plus, say 8x and minus 20. We'll throw the negative in there just because it makes it a little tougher, and that way we'll go over, the example will be sort of the toughest of the tougher of the two cases for these ones. So this is going to be rather short because the x squared just has a 1 in front of it. Your factors of x squared are just x, and I'd like to write them below there. Now the factors of 20, there's a couple of them. You could have 4 and 5, you could have 1 times 20, or you could have 2 times 10. Now we need the combination that's going to give us an 8 in the middle. So right off the bat, I'm going to not even bother writing down 4 and 5. Or actually, I take that back. Let's go ahead and write down 4 and 5, but let's see why it wouldn't work. If you multiply 4 times 5, if you multiply the cross product, the 4x, the 5x, that's never going to give you 8. Okay. Furthermore, in order to get negative 20, one of these would have to be negative. But it doesn't really matter which one's negative because they're not going to give you our middle term of 8. That's the key to this process. These two numbers multiply to make 20. These two things make x squared. The combination of these added has to give you the middle term. Okay, so 4 and 5 are wrong off the bat. Let's cross them out. And that's sort of the method here. It is a little bit of guess and check, but there's not too many factors of 20. So let's try 2 and 10. The reason I'm using that is I know I can use a combination of 2 and 10 to get us a positive 8. Notice the 8 is a positive, the 20 is a negative. So in order for 20 to be a negative, one of these has to be negative. In order for the 8 to be positive, we'll need a negative 2 and a positive 10. This way, when I check the cross product, I get negative 2x, positive 10x, and when we add those, we get positive 8x. That's the key. So our factors are going to be x minus 2 and x plus 10. Again, one factor on top, the other factor on the bottom. Okay. Now what we're doing here, that is now completely factored. Okay. All we're doing here is we're just rewriting the same this trinomial. Again, it's a trinomial because it has 3 terms. And we're taking this trinomial and breaking it into 2 binomials. All right. Now the reason that works is we're just taking apart the distributive property, which you also might know as FOIL. So if we wanted to check this, and that's a good idea, if we're going to check this, we got to use FOIL. And so FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, last. Okay. And let me go and move this down so you can see it. If we check this with FOIL, we better end up with what we started with. And I believe we will. So first refers to the first term here and the first term here. X times x, x squared. All right. Outside terms are the two ones on the outside. So the x times the 10 gives you plus 10x. Inside is the two inside terms. And that's going to give you, make sure to pay attention to the sign, negative 2x. And then last, the negative 2 times the 10. Multiplying, make sure, again, pay attention to the negative. That'll give us negative 20. And when you simplify, the only things we can combine are those two terms. And you'll have x squared plus 8x minus 20. That checks because we're now back to what we started with, which was x squared plus 8x minus 20. Okay? That's how you go ahead and factor those. And okay, let's go ahead and then try a different problem. In fact, let's go ahead and get rid of the old paper. Start with a fresh sheet. Now, if we're going to factor something with a number in front of the x squared, that's going to be a little bit trickier because there's more combinations. Now, the way we handle this, let's choose one. Let me go ahead and write it here. This one's going to be 8x squared plus 22x plus 15. Now, the good news is this is the same exact method. The bad news is because 8 is a coefficient here, we have to look at factors of 8 and factors of 15. Okay. So, let's get my document camera to stop auto-focusing here. Okay, 8x squared. The two ways we could do that might be 2x and 4x, or it might be, let me see if I can turn this autofocus off. There we go. All right, sorry about that. It might be 2x and 4x, and for the 15, it might be 3 and 5, or if I flip-flop those, that makes a difference. Okay. So let's say I put 5 and 3. Okay, those both multiply to make 15. Okay, and what we got to check is the cross product here. So 4x times 5 will give you 20x. 2 times 3 is 6x. And eventually, the more you do these, you can do them in your head. You'll know 20 and 6 are never going to give you a 22 in the middle. It's going to give you 26, which would be great if we had a 26 in the middle. We do not. All right, don't give up. Just cross those out. We just might need more scratch paper. So what should we change? Well, it makes a difference this time whether 5 was on top or 5 was on the bottom. So this time, let's put 5 on the bottom. And this is our second try, and I can already tell it's going to work. Here's why. 4 times 3 is 12. 2 times 5 is 10. 12 and 10 gives you 22x when you add them together. Okay. And by the way, we're adding these. This time, all we worried about were the positives because there were no negatives in the problem. We didn't even have to think about negative solutions. Okay. This right here is one factor. That right there is another factor. So 2x plus 3 and the 4x plus 5. And if you FOIL that, you're guaranteed you're going to get back to the start. All right, I will leave the foiling to you, but I guarantee you will get back to the start. And that's the whole process of factoring. Trying to take a trinomial, which is this, 3 different terms, and factor it into a binomial, which is 2 terms, times a binomial. That's the whole method here. Thanks for watching, and happy factoring.